Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, Adama Dieng, a dear and old friend with whom we have collaborated for many, many years past.
Thank you very much, Sharif. No less than 38 years when we met the first time, 1976. And bravo for your excellent introductory remarks. I would say that, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, I have the privilege to convey to you the warm greetings of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. The Secretary General would have certainly loved to be here with you, but as you know, his calendar did not allow. Right now, he is somewhere in New Zealand. So the Secretary General, however, attaches great importance to your work, and he thanks you for your partnership and looks forward to learning about the result of your gathering. And I'm deeply honored myself to make a few remarks at the opening session of this important and timely meeting. As we are all much aware, globalization has increased rapidly in the last decades, fueled by dramatic advances in science and technology. And as the world becomes smaller, our awareness of global issues and their impact is growing. The period since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 has been marked by epoch developments in critical areas. The growth of whole new bodies of international law and accompanying mechanisms at the global, regional, and national levels dedicated to the promotion and protection of human rights, and the development, largely in the last 20 years, of a system of international criminal justice with a permanent international criminal court at its center. Progress in these areas has been remarkable, but emerging concerns pose challenges to these gains. Among the most important are the twofold challenges of environment changes and population increase. The United Nations Task Force on Environmental Sustainability has identified environmental threats that may result in permanent, drastic changes to our planet. For its part, the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, has consistently raised concern at the impact of population growth. Just how big of an increase are we talking about? Well, within the next 30 to 40 years, the world population, now 7 billion, will probably exceed 9 billion, with an estimated 1.3 billion living or below the poverty line, as Professor Basuni just mentioned to us. The increased number of people exposed to famine, hunger, and disease, combined with the environmental issues, it will destabilize affected states, some of which will fail, as Basuni just mentioned. The competition for resources is likely to contribute to a rise in internal and regional conflicts, fueled by the availability of weapons. It will also contribute to increased international organized crime and terrorism. These and other factors will encourage increased migration and human trafficking. As a result of the latter phenomenon, an estimated 2 million people are already being held in conditions that constitute human and sexual slavery. Internal security will remain the primary concern of many states. We are currently witnessing a lessening of state engagement in collective action to prevent human tragedies. At the 2005 World Summit, all heads of state and government committed to act collectively to protect population from genocide, war crime, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. The principle known as the responsibility to protect R2P, we are going to have next week on Monday the informal debate at the General Assembly on Pillar 2. We must hold states to this commitment. Even as we witness the tragedies of the Central African Republic, Gaza, Iraq, and Syria, we must redouble our efforts to protect human rights and ensure accountability for crimes committed. The rule of law and respect for human rights must remain at the heart of our efforts to tackle global challenges. And this is why this meeting is important. We need to find innovative solutions to global problems. I know you will address these topics with intelligence and insight, and I'm pleased to see a number of United Nations senior colleagues here, and I will definitely bring to the attention of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon the conclusion of the meeting, and it is my sincere hope that the conclusion of this meeting will be shared as widely as possible and that the international community will take action from it. And I will close with a special thank to Professor Cherif Bassiouni, who has spent his life in the pursuit of human rights and international criminal justice. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary General. As if I may interject a brief sort of lighter note, the French have an elegant way of addressing history. In French, there's la grande histoire and there's la petite histoire. And la petite histoire is sometimes made of nasty stories, and sometimes it's made of wonderful stories. And the wonderful story is that with Adama and other friends here, we share a common friend who passed away, Neil McDermott. And Nigel Rodley shares in that recollection and service as well. Neil McDermott was one of those extraordinary English jurists who had a great career and who devoted his life to just serving and doing things behind the scenes. And truly behind the scenes, he accomplished a great deal. And one of his great accomplishments at a time when Adama was working with Neil McDermott in the International Commission of Jurists was to develop standards for the independence of the judiciary. And so that was the very first effort. And the other one was with Nigel when we worked on the 1975 Fifth United Nations Congress on Crime Prevention to have the international community adopt a declaration against torture and other forms of cruel and unusual punishment. And then when I think back in 1975, how difficult it was to get the international community to just adopt a resolution saying that torture is bad, let alone, subsequently reaching the result of achieving a convention against torture. And the first meeting of the Committee of Experts was here, and Neil McDermott and I co-chaired the Committee of Experts. We presented the draft, and our good friends from Sweden here will remember that Sweden took this draft presented by the AIDP and introduced it formally to the Commission on Human Rights. And I think it was Ambassador Danelius at the time who did that. And within a few years, it arrived. And then history has it that I believe the first rapporteur, special rapporteur on torture was Nigel. Maybe you came after, you were the second, Nigel, but you stayed about 10 years, didn't you? And he was the most extraordinary special rapporteur who for 10 years was really able to establish the foundation of the role of a special rapporteur in bringing about the moral pressure of the international community on countries that engage in terror. And so these are the small acts of small steps taken by individuals which have a long effect. And as you said, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we can all make a difference. And in several ways, many people in this room have made a difference. And I think that's probably the most important thing that we can ultimately achieve. Having said that, I want to just move on and saying there was a young journalist from Palestine, what is it, 30 years ago, or something like that, who came to one of the seminars here, and she too worked with Neil McDermott. What's that? Jurist. But you did work in journalism at one time, or at least you wrote as a journalist, but you were a jurist, and she also was a protege of Neil McDermott, and in the course of time she became the director of rule of law and has made exceptional achievements, one of which is probably the most exceptional report made on any investigation, and that is the report that she made as the senior staff person on Rwanda. That was quite exceptional in its accuracy, detail, and depth and breadth. And I'm delighted to have Mona Rishmawi join us here to speak on behalf of the Office of High Commissioner.
Thank you, Professor Bassiouni. Your Royal Highness, it's great to have you here with us. President Daniel Leturk, it's really wonderful to have you back with the Regal community, so it's really great to have you. Excellencies, the Minister of Justice of Bahrain, the Attorney General of Qatar, really wonderful to have you. Friends and colleagues, on behalf of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, which the new High Commissioner will be joining us on Monday, which Prince Zaid Ra'ad bin Al-Hussein from Jordan, who will be joining the office as High Commissioner starting Monday. I wish to thank you very much for inviting the office to this meeting and looking forward to the discussion. Over 40 years, the International Institute for Higher Studies in Criminal Science in Syracuse has inspired thought-provoking discussions about international law under the able stewardship of Professor Sharif Bassiouni. Today, once again, Sharif, you invite lots of friends here, prompting top-level experts to embark on an intellectual journey to predict the future of human rights and criminal justice in light of contemporary trends. In considering the global issues surrounding us, one cannot escape the prevalence of violence, often on the basis of narrow definition of identity that dominates the news every day by state and non-state actors. We talk in numbers, but behind each figure are multiple human tragedies of death, injury, destruction, and physical and emotional trauma that will cripple individuals and communities for decades. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights deals with these issues on a daily basis. The mere existence of the International Criminal Court makes the promise of ending impunity and of delivering justice for the victims more real. Yet, there is some backlash against international justice. Is it the failure of norms, or is it the failure of institutions of enforcement? We have seen the Security Council's paralysis in the face of mass atrocities that continue to shock the conscience of humanity. These are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Yet, we cannot make the scale of conflict surrounding us eclipse our hopes for the future. It is important to remember that it is not all gloom. In scanning the horizon, we cannot deny the superb successes humanity has made in saving lives through the advancement of science, medicine, and technology. Digital communication technologies are also boosting freedom of expression and facilitating global debate. We have made significant progress around the world in a number of human rights issues, such as equality and empowerment of women, universal elementary education, and a growing acceptance, an important growing acceptance of a moratorium on death penalty. And here I think the presence of the colleague from the United Arab Emirates is really significant as the last country in our region to have a de jure moratorium on death penalty. Really important, thank you for that. Yet the gains seem to benefit the privileged and many are left behind. More needs to be done to address the socioeconomic inequalities which continue to generate cycles of human rights violations and security. Recent protests have highlighted that political freedom and economic development cannot be delinked, underscoring the multifaceted impact of urbanization, disputes over land and resources, and the vulnerable position of the youth. And as we as the world shifts and states reassert national security, often at the expense of human rights, we face wholly new types of insecurity. I can only mention briefly the growing proof of environmental degradation and the impact of climate change, the new technological challenges to the right to privacy via governmental attempts to create a surveillance society, and the growing insanity of extremism, and I cannot even say the word, extremism and hate speech, and with single identity. These are some of the questions that I hope our meeting will help us to address. The partnership between the United Nations, particularly the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Syracuse Institute under the leadership of Professor Bassiouni, is long and strong. We look forward to the meeting and to learning more from the discussions, how we can tackle the complex and vital issues facing us today and in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rishmawi, for these words. As you know, the Navi Pillai is High Commissioner, left her office. I believe her last day was August 31st. And the new High Commissioner's first day will be the 7th or something like that. So we fell in between. I had invited both. Both wanted to come, but they would have had to come in their personal capacity as opposed to their institutional capacity. So they thought the best solution was to have Mrs. Rishmawi represent both of them. So we thank you for coming here. Well, for the